All right, everybody, welcome back to the Full Court Trap Podcast, coming at you at the conclusion of another epic college basketball weekend. And join with me today a strange face we haven't seen in a while, Mr. Jack Sullivan. He's back. Jack, how you been, man? We've been missing you for a while.
Phenomenal. I saw the Illinois Michigan State game. I saw an upside down banner. I saw a team score negative 2 points in 8 minutes. It's been phenomenal. I'm wearing the shirt they gave us. Yeah, I'm having a blast here.
Hanging the
awesome.
TSJ banner upside down, that must have been an experience.
Oh, it was. It was the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, I wish I could have been there for that too. That was a whole crap show. But Blake Smith is here as always, my main man. We got a lot to discuss from the weekend in college basketball. Plenty of great matchups across the board. We'll start off with Tennessee. They went down to College Station and they took down the Texas A&M Aggies. Chaz Lanier, man, what a performance from him. 30 points on the game, 8 3-pointers. That was his season high. Zakai Ziegler was making big plays down the stretch, had one of the dagger shots down there to finish off the game. Jordan Gainey chipped in some crucial shots as well. Sully, I'll let you take the floor first since you haven't been with us in a while. What did you think about the Vols getting this one done?
Yeah, Chaz Lanier looks like an All-American. I'll say that right off the bat. Like you said, 8 3-pointers. Nuts. He looked phenomenal. And then Zakai Ziegler, too. He hit one of the biggest shots at the end of the game to have Tennessee eventually go on and win. Dagger. Yeah, but when Tennessee plays like this, they're close to unbeatable. And there's a good chance. I know I hate saying it, too, because I've been very critical of Tennessee. I think there's times where they're very overrated. But their resume is shaping up to be like one of the best 2 seeds ever, and which is why like their losses that they keep taking doesn't really matter. They're sticking on the 2 line from here on out. But yeah, I am a little worried about A&M though. I think dropping this game to Tennessee is huge because this is a win you kind of needed. I mean, A&M, they're still going to make the tournament. No worries there, of course. But I think this is a win you need for your season. I'm always skeptic of Wade Taylor in every single game because I think there's moments where he's phenomenal, looked awesome. And there's moments where, oh no, get the ball out of his hands immediately or else disaster occurs. And disaster occurred this game.
Yeah, for sure. And this was a big one, Blake, for the SEC standings. This propelled Tennessee after some other results as well. They got some help from some other teams, but they're top 4 in the SEC now, which would clinch them a double bye in Nashville at the SEC tournament, which is going to be absolutely critical in a year like this where it's so loaded top to bottom. But talking back specifically to this game, I mean, in the preview, me and you, we both went with Tennessee here, and I think we kind of called the recipe to success. I said that if Chaz got going and you had some other guys chip in some crucial plays, then they would just be too much for A&M to overcome. And with Wade Taylor doing Wade Taylor things, I mean, that kind of just dug the grave for A&M there. But we kind of had this one spot on. We'll do a little victory lap for myself and you.
Yeah, I feel like we've been spot on lately with these predictions. But yeah, Tennessee, I mean, the first like 9 minutes of the game that they had played, put up like 9 points in 9 minutes. Like to start off that bad and finish how hot they did is kind of asinine to really think about it. And Texas A&M, their identity all season has been like offensive rebounding, which they did like really well to start out the game, and just toughness overall as a team. And they kind of folded there, I felt like, in the second half. Letting up easy baskets. Tennessee was hitting shots when they really needed to. And Chaz Lanier, like we called in the preview last week for this game, he went off 30 points, 8 threes, and the dude like was going nuclear. Like he looked unconscious out there on the floor. So this is a big win for Tennessee, especially after some semi offensive like struggles this season. But yeah, they looked a lot better on offense this game after like the first 9 minutes or so.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing about this Tennessee team. Like, there's moments where their offense just looks brutal, archaic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if Chaz can't get it going and the other guys are kind of relied upon more heavily, it gets a little bit sketchy. But when Chaz does his thing, it opens up so much more for the rest of those guys, like you saw with Ziegler, Gainey, and all of them chipping in. And Sully, you talked about their resume being one of the best ever for a 2. I don't think it's ridiculous to say that they could possibly sneak their way into a 1 seed if Florida were to slip up or if Duke were to slip up somehow, I don't see Duke slipping up. If Tennessee wants to crawl into that conversation, I think they're going to be looking at Florida or Alabama. But do we think that the Vols are going to have maybe a puncher's chance at still stealing a 1 seed when it comes time for Selection Sunday here 2 weeks from today, I think?
Yeah, I do think they have a chance. So they actually have LSU coming up. They should win that. That should not really be a contest, even though they did give Florida a game recently, which could pay into Florida might be slipping here. But they also play Alabama at home, and I don't think they're losing that game to Alabama. And we've seen Alabama's playing a gauntlet currently. They lost to Missouri, lost to Auburn, and they're going to get Auburn again. I think there's definitely a chance they might slip up. Now, I think it's unlikely because Alabama, once again, playing one of the hardest schedules in the country, possibly all time. I'm going to be honest. Like, their non-conference was insane. Their conference schedule is insane. It's like, that's probably, they could lose so many games and probably never drop off a one. But if there is a team that could possibly overtake them, it would be Tennessee. Though I do think their chances of overtaking 1 seed, it bodes better with Florida being the one to slip up than Alabama. So, yeah, I do think they have a puncher's chance. I don't think it's going to happen just because I think these 4 1 seeds we have currently are very good. And I just don't see any of them really slipping up big time.
If they could have found a way to get that game against Auburn on January 25th, where Auburn was really struggling offensively, that may have put them in the 1 seed territory where we stand as of today. But, I mean, this resume, it's phenomenal, Blake, top to bottom. I mean, the only really bad loss you can say for them is that 30-point just absolute walloping they took in the swamp against Florida. But, I mean, other than that, they took care of their business in the non-conference and throughout conference play so far, really. The only stains that they've had is, like I said, that Florida game, and then they got swept by Kentucky. But, I mean, Kentucky's not a bad team by any means.
No, not at all, especially with how offensive powered that Kentucky team is. So, I mean, it's not a bad loss. Both those games aren't bad losses at all. And like you said, they built a really, really solid resume this season, beating Louisville by like 20-plus early in the season. Beat a Baylor team that's kind of been underwhelming, but was ranked top 15 at that point by 15. They ended up beating Arkansas by 20-plus. Texas on the road, not a bad win. And then, like you said, the Auburn game, they slipped up big time. They could have had that game and probably would be sitting as a 1 seed if they won that.
Yeah, and then Vandy as well. They did lose that one in Memorial,
Yeah.
but I mean, ranked teams just go to die in Memorial this year. I'm sure we're going to be talking about that at some point. But
they had their chances to win that game too.
Yeah,
just Chaz with the choke job there at the end.
The free throws, yeah, he missed those. Those were bad, but we'll have plenty of time to talk about Vandy here in a bit. I think that might be on the agenda here. But moving on over into the Big Ten. Gentlemen, to be honest with you, I saw this game in the first half. It didn't really look like it was going to be much of a contest, but Oregon pulled off an absolute stunner and won by 4 in overtime at Wisconsin, 77-73. Blake, this one, it was a phenomenal ending. I tuned in right around the last couple minutes of regulation. Jackson Shellstad had an absolute bomb of a 3 from way downtown to put that one into overtime, and then once we got into overtime itself, Nate Biddle, he took over a little bit there. And, yeah, Oregon's depth really got this one done for them. They had some guys off the bench chip in big time as well. This feels like one that Wisconsin's going to be kicking themselves over a little bit because they really let it slip away.
Definitely. And Wisconsin's front court issues, they've been a real thing all year. And I think Nate Biddle just took that to his advantage, had 23 on the night on good shooting splits, had 6 boards, 3 blocks, and I think he was really a big factor in that game. Then you got Jackson Shellstad hitting a big-time shot down the stretch. And I don't know, this Wisconsin team, they've been a weird team to me all season long. I thought they were legit, but, I mean, when you're really looking at their resume, their biggest win probably is an Arizona team early in the season that was really struggling. And then they just beat Purdue recently by 10. But Purdue, I've never been high on them. So, I mean, those 2 wins for Wisconsin aren't really that great. John Tonji, if he's not on, which he wasn't by any means in this game, if he's not on, then that team just goes down a whole nother notch. And I really think that separated Oregon in this game.
Yeah, Sully, you were pretty high on Oregon a couple months back. I'll let you take the stage on this one. What do you think about the Ducks going into Madison and getting this one done?
Yeah, I'll keep it short, keep it simple. Taking a little victory lap. Jackson Shellstad, the kid's a bucket, struggled early in the year. He's looking phenomenal in Big Ten play. I think TJ Bamba played phenomenal defense on Tanji the entire game. I think that was very big for their chances moving forward throughout that game. I wouldn't say shut him down, but definitely slowed him down, not to the level that he usually plays at. And then Blake mentioned that Wisconsin's going to kick themselves. They're 100% going to kick themselves. This probably takes them off the 2 line for good, I would say, just because of how good those 2 seeds look. And then they'll probably still maintain a 3. I don't know their current schedule coming up, so they might be running a mini gauntlet.
But they got Washington next at home.
Okay, never mind. They're going to win that game. But so yeah, I think Wisconsin definitely is going to kick themselves over this game. They were up like 15 points at one point in the game, and they just blew it. But credit to Oregon. They played a phenomenal game, especially that second half and their comeback, and they looked very good in overtime.
Yeah, down the stretch, the resume opportunities are kind of slim here for Wisconsin. They've got Washington, Minnesota, and Penn State. They do have Michigan State next Sunday, but they have to travel to Michigan State. Michigan State looks like one of the better teams in the country right now, and they're the top dog in the Big Ten. But what do we think before we move on? I know Blake said this Wisconsin team's really confusing. I'll keep it with you here, Sully, but we're obviously getting closer to March. Now, what do we think is kind of the expectation for Wisconsin heading into this final stretch? I mean, do we think they're going to have the chance to make some noise when it comes to the Big Ten tournament and beyond? Because I just can't get a read on this team. There's moments where they look like they could be poised for a really deep run, and then there's other moments where they just kind of put up a stinker performance and have you scratching your head a little bit.
So, yeah, I think in the Big Ten tournament, they definitely can make noise. Not really worried about that. But the actual tournament, I am a little skeptical, a little nervous of. I do think they're going to be like a trendy team that you pick to be upset in the first round. I'm going to be honest, because if Tanji's not on, I think you can kind of game plan around the rest of that Wisconsin team. I think Klesman's solid. Blackwell's a very good player. But I question their down low, especially if a team takes advantage of them down low. I think Crowell struggled this year. He's not been his usual self in the previous years. And I can't remember the forward's name off the top of my head, but I think, yeah, him. I think he's a solid ball player, but I do think I think one mid-major definitely could possibly take advantage of this Wisconsin team and get them out in the first weekend. No, I do think second weekend is probably what I'm feeling for them. I think that's going to be their actual not floor, but where they'll end up in the tournament.
Yeah, what do you think, Blake? You think we could see this team possibly getting picked off a little bit early with the struggles they've shown here against a team like Oregon that, I mean, they're not a bad team by any means, but it's one that you expect to win on your home court.
Yeah, Solon nailed it. I don't really see this team making a deep round of 32. Second weekend type of team seems ideal. I think that's ideal, like expectations for this team, especially with how hot cold they are, because they're really likely to get picked off by a team that's going to be hungry, like a mid-major in the tourney. And I don't really know how they're going to pan out here in the Big Ten tourney as well, because the couple teams that they've already played in their conference play that are ranked higher than them in the rankings right now, with that being Michigan and Marquette, they blew those games both. So, I mean, it's just hard really to tell what they're going to be able to do.
Yeah, moving on from this one and traveling on down to Houston, where it was the L.J. Cryer show against Iowa State. He had a phenomenal outing, 28 points on the game, as the fifth-ranked Cougars got it done against the shorthanded Cyclones, who were missing Curtis Jones and Keshawn Gilbert. That really did put kind of a stain on what they were able to do in this game. But I will give them credit, because Otzelberger's squad, they were down by as much as 16 at one point, and they got that game within single digits, a one-possession game at one point. I'm very impressed with the fight they put, especially on the road there. And Sully, if this team can get healthy, Iowa State, I mean, I don't want to discredit anything Houston's done, because they've been remarkable lately. They're the best team in the Big 12 by far. But if Iowa State can get healthy and get some things going again, I think this is a team that nobody's going to want to see as we head into March.
Oh, 100%. Healthy Iowa State, they're 17-1. You know who their one loss is to?
Auburn.
The best team in college basketball off a game-winning layup.
Mm-hmm.
They are dangerous. They're fully healthy, they're going to be one of my teams I'm definitely looking at in the actual bracket when that's released in a couple weeks. But yeah, I think they played really well. Obviously, that first half, they did not. They obviously didn't look good, so it's kind of contradicting what I'm saying. They were turning the ball over. They couldn't get a flow offensively. But the second half, they settled in. Milan Momcilovic, he looked awesome in that second half. Struggled the first half, looked phenomenal in that second half. Joshua Jefferson, he's always been a very consistent guy for them. But yeah, they just didn't have enough to overcome the odds there that they were faced with Houston. But yeah, I think this Iowa State team, when they're healthy, is going to be very dangerous. And we've seen Houston. I'll talk about them real quick. LJ Cryer, awesome. And we all know this Houston team is very dangerous to begin with.
Yeah, for sure. And Blake, I mean, when LJ Cryer is humming like that, I don't think anybody's going to be able to beat Houston.
No, not at all. Especially with what didn't he have an insane performance against Bama and the players there attorney? I thought
believe,
earlier this year.
Yeah, I think he did. That was so far back; it's tough for me to remember. But I think you're right.
Starting to feel like he's like one of those guys that just shine like in the biggest or the brightest lights, like the biggest games. Because I mean, doing that against two really really good teams is kind of insane, and I think that like fares well in their March Madness runs eventually here in the next couple weeks.
Oh, for sure. And I'm very high on Houston. I've said it before on this podcast, especially after that Kansas game where they won in double OT. They've got all the make of a Final Four championship team. I think they could easily find themselves in that spot as we head into the deep part of March. But Iowa State, yeah, Milan Momcilovic, he was absolutely phenomenal. He was their go-to guy in the second half. Really put all the weight on his shoulders with their two leading scorers out. But if they can get healthy, I think Iowa State's going to be very scary, and I won't be surprised if we see these two teams battling it out in the Big 12 tournament here in a couple of weeks. But speaking to another team that really needs to get healthy, Kentucky, they took a 13-point L on the road at Alabama. Blake, we talked about this in the preview. We really didn't expect anything else from this game with Kentucky missing 3 scholarship players right now, all at the guard spot. And you could really tell in moments in this game because – no disrespect to Travis Perry. He did the best he could in the spot that he was forced into. But this team, they just have no rhythm or flow without those guys that really stir the drink for them with Lamont Jackson.
I agree, and I'm kind of surprised this game ended up being only a 13-point deficit because, I mean, with how hot Alabama has been, not even like the past couple games before this game they struggled. But it was just like in general this season, how hot they've been scoring wise. I'm just surprised on that end. And like being down 2 guys that are key players, it's kind of insane. This game only ended up being a 13-point loss. Andrew Carr, he's starting to look healthy, so that's a positive sign. Went 6 of 9 from the field, 3 threes, 17 points. Amari Williams, another consistent factor in this Kentucky offense. Had 17, 11, and 6 on the night, but had 4 turnovers. But, I mean, that's kind of to be expected with a guy who's never really been a, key guy in an offense, running the offense, I mean. So, and then you got Otega Owe as well. I don't know what the hell I was watching the other night. 1 of 9 from the field, fouled out, just didn't look himself at all. Ended a streak of double digits points in every game so far this season. Travis Perry, I mean, he did okay in his role. He still got blown by the entire time by Mark Sears. And then also, the hit on the officiating in that game. I'm not one to, cry about officiating all the time, but this is about as bad of a officiating job that could possibly happen. I feel like there's a lot of phantom fouls on both ends of the floor, and it seemed extreme tonight, or not tonight, but the other night.
Oh, it was horrible. I mean, Grant Nelson was getting called for fouls just for breathing on a dude's neck. He had 5 points in this game, only played 15 minutes, but Mark Sears and Aiden Holloway really stepped up. And Sully, that's about as dangerous of a combo as you can get at the guard spot anywhere. When you've got a guy who's an All-American caliber type player with Mark Sears, and then coming right into his spot to relieve him when he's tired. You've got Aiden Holloway, who is dynamic in high school, really struggled kind of in spots at Auburn last year, but he's found a groove with Nate Oates.
Yeah, you guys pretty much touched on everything. So, but like you said, though, with Aiden Holloway, Mark Sears, those two are – Aiden Holloway has some insane shot-making skills. And then same with Mark Sears, too. Mark Sears was just going off yesterday. I'm not shocked. Kentucky didn't really have the guys to combat that. But I think this Alabama team, though, the guys they can have that can just come in the game and just be – that just play, it is genuinely insane. Like Mo Diabate, I think he's a very good player for them. Jaron Stevenson's a former high 4-star, low 5-star type of guy, I believe, and he's off the bench for them. Aiden Holloway, we saw what he did. And then Aiden Sherrill, too, he plays some spot minutes, and there's definitely somebody else that I'm missing who plays usually. But, yeah, this Alabama team's so deep. I do question their defense, though, because Kentucky in the first 10 minutes just out. They blitzed them immediately. Yeah. Lights out, blitzed them from the jump. And then the last 30 minutes we saw what happened. Because Kentucky just didn't have the guys to overcome what Alabama has.
Yeah, I mean, is it a stretch to say, Blake, if Lamont and Jackson both play in this game, that maybe Kentucky wins? Because I feel like they could have sustained the groove they had early.
I don't think it's wild to say it at all. I still think Bama would have pulled it off, but, I mean, this game probably could have went either way if Kentucky had both those guys healthy because, I mean, with how they're playing in that first 10 minutes or so without those two guys is kind of crazy to really sit there and watch. But yeah, I think Bama still would have won, but it probably would have been a little closer than it was.
I will say another plus for this Kentucky team. I mean, you got to get the rest of the guys healthy, but Andrew Carr, he finally started to look like the guy that he was a couple of weeks back before he started having back troubles. He had 17 in this game. Kind of felt like Alabama was just letting him have what he wanted. And Amari Williams, he stepped up and he's been turning into one of the better bigs in the SEC. But it really just feels like Kentucky was kind of doomed from the start in this matchup. And then you factor in that a guy like Otega Owe, who had been scoring in double digits every single night, just has an absolute stinker and really can never find a groove. It just wasn't really their day. And I don't know what the latest updates are on Lamont and Jackson. I believe they've been doing some light practice activities, and maybe in the next week or two we'll see them come back out. But I think for Kentucky, it's just a matter of simply just get healthy. They're kind of like Iowa State. I don't know if they're as dangerous as Iowa State, but Sully, I think if this Kentucky team gets healthy, they're still a very solid threat when it comes to the postseason coming up here soon.
Yeah, no, 100%. And actually, it's kind of weird saying considering they lost by 13, but I think you kind of have to be semi-impressed with Kentucky. Like, they showed resilience. They just didn't have, the enough to get over the hump when they would get back into the game. But I think fully healthy with Lamont, with Jackson, you're like you said with Carr, you're getting great minutes from him recently. He looks like he's over the back issues. Amari Williams has been phenomenal recently. You know what you're usually going to get out of Otega. Well, obviously, you didn't get that against Alabama, so that hindered them completely. But if Travis Perry plays the minutes he did as a reserve, and Kobe Bryant can shoot like how he did yesterday, they can be they're going to be a 3 seed. So you can't really say sneaky, but they have some Final Four potential. I don't think they're going to make it. They'll probably get picked off by a 2 seed, Iowa State or Houston for that matter. But I do think they have some serious upside in March with the team being fully healthy.
Yeah, and last thing I'll say on this group too, Blake, but with the injuries, it really has forced guys like Trent Noah, Colin Chandler, and Travis Perry to take a step up. And I think that's going to be pretty valuable going down the stretch because these guys wouldn't be getting the runtime they would have if these injuries didn't happen. And they've been serviceable in spots. So I think that's a key factor here for Mark Pope if you're wanting to develop a little bit more depth as you head towards a postseason run.
For sure. And it really teaches these guys what the system is and what's expected of them. And going into a crazy environment like Coolman was there and being in a big game like that against a top 5 team in the country, I mean, it really puts a lot of pressure on those guys, but sooner or later it's going to teach them because March is right around the corner. The SEC tourney's right around the corner. NCAA tourney right around the corner. So this is definitely a big learning curve for those guys, but I think it's really going to pay off if Lamont gets hurt somehow again, if Jackson somehow can't really be 100%. So, I mean, those minutes I feel like are going to be very valuable moving down the stretch.
Yeah, and lastly, on the Alabama side of things, I'm looking right now. 6 of their last 7 games, they've given up 80 or more points, and that includes 94 to Auburn, 110 to Missouri, 81 to an Arkansas squad that really hasn't looked effective offensively for a while. Is it just going to be the case with Alabama that their offense is just going to have to carry the load when it comes to postseason? Because I feel like if they get into a battle with somebody like Houston that can really lock down defensively, I feel like that's a nightmare scenario if you're Nate Oates. I don't know what you think about that, Sully, but I'm starting to get really concerned about this team because the defense is just – it's not there, and I don't think there's any way that it's going to be fixed over the next 4 games before postseason play.
No, you're 100% right. And I think the defense has them a step down or a step below the tier of national championship contending teams. I think they're a Final Four level team. I don't deny that. We saw that last year. And they had a bad defense last year. But their defense, I just don't think they can overcome that. Like their high-power offense can overcome how bad their defense can be at times. Because you run into Auburn, for example, there's a team that is a national championship level team, and Auburn went in there and won. Auburn went into Alabama and won on the road. So I am very concerned, like you said, too.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things unfold. Nate Oates, he's obviously very aware of the problem. He's had some comments about it that have been notable. But moving to the other school in the state of Alabama, we won't stay on this one too long because the result wasn't very shocking. Auburn, the number 1 team in the country, they get it done against Georgia at home. It was a close one for a while, but they end up pulling away by 12. Janai Broome has an absolute career night with 31 and 14. But Blake, I mean, this is 2 games in a row now where Auburn's really let subpar opponents hang around with them on their home court. Is there any level of concern here with the Tigers right now? Because it kind of feels like I wouldn't say people have figured them out per se, but they are kind of taking a little bit of a notch down from the play that we saw in the Alabama game.
I don't know about like being concerned for this. I just think it's more so like they're getting down to the wire of regular season play. And I mean, every team in the country has played in like 25 games plus so far. So I think teams have kind of gotten the gist of like their game plan. It's not really worked as we've seen besides like Florida recently, but guys are starting to be able to like pick up on little things in this Auburn team. And I think in that Kentucky game that's going to come up, we'll be able to see possibly them picking them off. I think Auburn does get picked off one more time by some team down the stretch here, whether that's in the SEC tourney or in the final stretch of the regular season.
Oh, yeah, they could definitely get picked off because in these Final Four games, you led right into what I was going to bring up. They have Ole Miss at home on Wednesday night. I think they take care of business there. But then they've got 2 straight true road games, one at Kentucky, then they go to Texas A&M, and then final regular season game, they're going to host Alabama. So, Sully, what do we think? I mean, Auburn, we know what they're capable of. I don't think that anyone has figured out this team, obviously, because they've kept rolling. But they have been a little bit slower than we expect in these last 2 games against Georgia and Arkansas. So just something I wanted to point out. But what do we think about Auburn heading down this final gauntlet they have in these last 4?
Yeah, before I get into the last 4 games, I think they're just coasting right now. I just want to get that out there. I think they know they're a 1 seed. They have the best resume in college basketball. We can just play for shits and gigs. Who gives a fuck about like these teams that we're playing right now? To say it in that manner. But in the last 4 games, I'm going to say they're 3-1. I think their loss is going to be, shockingly, I think it's going to be actually against Alabama. I think they're both going to split. Alabama's going to go into Auburn and win. And Auburn's going to, as we saw, go into Alabama and win. So, yeah, I think that's going to be their 1 loss. I do think they're going to beat Ole Miss. They're going to beat Kentucky, and they're going to beat Texas A&M. And I think the 1 loss is going to be against Alabama.
I think down the stretch, when I look at it, 3-1 seems most likely to me. I think that they're going to defend the home court. I want to say that Bama could get the split, but I just don't know. Winning in the jungle, it's so hard. Although Florida did prove they could do it, and they did do that without Elijah Martin. But of those two true road games, I think they're more likely to drop Texas A&M. Blake, you think that 3-1 down the stretch here is what's most likely going to happen? I know you said you could see them being picked off, but if you had to guess right now, how are they going to end up finishing as they go through this tough stretch?
I do agree with Sully. I think they go 3-1 here. I mean, Alabama does seem like the most likely game to lose just because of how high-powered their offense is, and it's just tough in general to beat any team in like any sport multiple times in a season. So I do think that's going to be one game that they'll lose. And if they don't lose that one, maybe on the road at A&M. I don't know. Probably not, just because how bad A&M is offensively.
Yeah, I think I'm going to bet on A&M being the one loss. I will say if Lamont Butler and Jackson Robinson can get healthy for that Kentucky game, that's definitely going to be interesting because if Kentucky has all the players there, I mean, this is a team that went pound for pound with Duke, so they obviously can compete with the best of the best when they're healthy. So we'll see how that unfolds. The health situation there makes it hard to bet on anything Kentucky related right now, so I'm staying far away from that. But 3-1 seems realistic. Last kind of weekend game that we'll spotlight solely by itself. Duke a lot, Illinois a little in Madison Square Garden, 67-110. Sully, you've got the Illinois gear on. You can take a stab at this one first. I mean, this was just the Duke show from start to finish.
Yeah, Duke is awesome and Illinois sucks. That's the main takeaway. This Illinois team is terrible. I hate to be so harsh, but they shot 2 of 26 from 3. And a walk-on from Duke, who is about 5'8", came in and hit 1 3. So he made one less 3 than Illinois by himself. Yes. Duke is awesome. I think they're going to win the national championship as of February 23rd, as we're recording this. But yeah, Illinois, I think they'll be lucky to win one tournament game. They can't shoot, but they continue to keep shooting. Coaching malpractice. And then Brad Underwood, I think this guy's an absolute goof. I think he's a great coach at times, but he goes into the press conference, he goes, man, if we shot 5 of 16 in the first half, we'd only be down 2. How are you playing hyper? Number one, you can't do that in a press conference. Number two, you're still down and Duke would still beat you. And number 3, I don't know number 3 because that's how factual I was. I think Illinois is doomed. I mean, they play Iowa coming up. Must-win game. If you don't beat Iowa, oh my God, cancel the program now because then you have to go play. I think who is it? Purdue and Michigan. I think. So Illinois is screwed. That's the main takeaway. They are not in any good shape going down the season. They somehow regressed.
Yep. They have been dealing with, I don't know what it is, but that plague or whatever that's just running through their program right now, it's been absolutely brutal for them. I know they have had some guys that haven't been able to practice in weeks, so it's getting pretty ugly over there in Illinois. I mean, that's the worst loss they've had in their program's history, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Duke had 7 guys in double figures. Blake, there's not really a whole lot to say here. Duke, from start to finish, this was, as Joel Berry II said on ACC Network, a glorified practice.
Yeah, it did seem like some charity exhibition type of game, like with a blue blood versus a low major or even a D3. This game was a shit show from Illinois. Duke, like Sully said, I do think they can win the national championship. Like, if it's not Auburn, it's got to be Duke right now. Duke is one out of like 2 teams this year to pick Auburn off, and they did it at Cameron Indoor. And I do think this Duke team, top to bottom, is just super scary. They had 7 guys in double digits on the night scoring. And if you're getting 7 guys to score double digits in the game against a potential March Madness team, then I think you're in pretty good hands. Yeah, this Duke team's scary.
If Caleb Foster is scoring double digits on you, I mean, that's how you know things are going downhill. And gosh, Illinois, I don't know what they do from here. Shooting 7% from 3, 2 for 26 on the game, 37% from the field, while Duke shot 55 and 52%. That's just unbelievable. That was a generational beatdown.
Okay, can I add one more thing now?
Yes.
So the big thing about Illinois, take a lot of threes. All right, that's fine. Go ahead. The problem with Illinois, they make 0 threes. 316th nationally in like 3-point percentage or something. 3-point, I don't know, something to do with the 3-point statistic. Why do you continue to keep shooting threes?
I mean, like you said, it is just coaching Mount, like whatever.
They got to start going in eventually. I guess that's just the mentality. Dion Waiters, they're not.
Time where I'm like, they're not, and they just continue to just keep firing. They'll just Kasparis, for example. I think he's a great player. He's going to be in the NBA next year. He'll drive to the rim and then fire a rocket pass out to whoever who's wide open for a reason, shooting threes. And per usual, it's not going in. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's time. I think they just should, this is the first ever time, and it's 2025. They should just be saying, you know what, we're done shooting threes. Outside of Mike Woodson, who was doing that last year, but they should just be, go to the rim and take a mid-range shot. Screw it, we're not hitting a three. Take a two and pray to God that goes in, and then maybe take 1 3 if they leave it wide open, which they probably will because they can't hit threes to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, not much more to say there. We've pretty much written the Illinois obituary there. So,
yep,
not the best look there for Mr. Brad Underwood, but Duke, I mean, shout out to them. That's one of the best performances you'll probably ever see when it comes to regular season basketball. But some other games to quickly hit on for today. St. John's, they took care of business against Dan Hurley. Dan Hurley, I don't think he was flexing his rings to bald men in the crowd as he walked away today. That was a rough outing for them. Purdue, Blake, I'll let you hit on this one briefly because we know what you think about Purdue. They lost to Mike Woodson. What happened?
So basically this Purdue team, they suck. Like, I'll just put it point blank. If Braden Smith, TKR, and Fletcher Lawyer, if all 3 of those guys ain't clicking, then that team's just awful. Miles Colvin showed some promise in that first half. Had like 8 points on efficient shooting splits, but then that second half was just a beat down. IU had a 28-3 run in that second half to start out. Purdue ended the first half on like a 20-4 run, and they were up pretty big there by like 10, 12, something like that. And then IU just comes out, punches them in the mouth. And if you're losing a Mike Woodson ran team in the Big 2025, you don't deserve to have any praise. I think this Purdue team is not good at all. Like I've said a billion times on here. Fletcher Lawyer, he had a really good game though. I think it was like somewhere around 16 points on the night, 18, somewhere around there. The second half, he was on fire, getting to the line a lot, scoring efficiently. Braden Smith, he was basically invisible in that game. I think he shot like 2-8 from the field. Wasn't really playmaking like he usually does. Was getting pressured like crazy by Miles Rice. Trey Galloway for IU. I mean, this is a guy who I personally have never thought is a good player, but he showed out today and like 15 points, 9 assists, I think. Malik Renew, 7 of 7 from the field, 15 points. Like this IU team, I think they're on the right side of the bubble now, but I don't know if I want to see them. Like, if I'm a team that's going up against them in like the first 4 or whatever, I don't know if I want to see them just because of how good they could be if like their team's clicking. They got the pieces. It's just a matter of really putting it together. And to do this for IU against on paper, a solid team, even though I'm not a big fan of Purdue, to do like win big like this, I think it says a lot about this Hoosiers team, especially with Mackenzie Mabako putting up a big old donut in like basically every stat line.
Yeah, and Lenardi going into the weekend, when we talked about bubble teams, Blake, I think he had them on like the first 4 outline or something. So, Sully, make your claim right now. Does Mike Woodson make it into the big dance for his last dance as the Hoosiers coach?
Since the bubble sucks this year, they're making it. And since the bubble, like I said, sucks, North Carolina's making it. And that's going to be a playing game in Dayton, and I'm not going to watch that game.
Oh, I will be there for the Wash.
I will not be. I will not be watching that. It's going to be a battle of both teams wanting to lose.
Blake, I think I threw this out there a couple weeks ago, and it could be possible. What if we get a first 4 of Arkansas, North Carolina, Indiana, and then just throw in another random team
I
like
wish
Oklahoma or Vandy.
I wish I could play the video of The Rock right now. Chills. This is how real it feels for The Rock. That'd be the best
there.
first four ever. Like, honestly.
Are you kidding me? John Calipari in the first four, that would be ratings galore.
Literally.
People would be tuned in for that one, and that's leading perfectly into what I want to talk about next. So it was a big weekend for bubble teams. A lot of teams got some huge wins when it comes to their tournament hopes. BYU, they pulled off a controversial one against Arizona. Arkansas got it done against Missouri. Who else? Vanderbilt, Memorial Magic struck again. So a lot of really good wins for teams across the board. Oklahoma takes out Mississippi State. Sully, I will start with you. I want to give the most impressive bubble team result of the weekend, or the one that's the most important for a team's tournament hopes. Who did you think made the biggest statement for their bubble resume this weekend?
Yeah, you just mentioned them. Oklahoma. They beat Mississippi State. That was awesome. Jeremiah Fears, we know who he is, a pro. They got some other good minutes. Let me pull up the stats real quick because I cannot remember exactly who did what. They had, I forget who it was. Oh my gosh.
Off topic, but did you all see the guy in that game that lost tooth fragments on the floor?
Yeah,
that was
Yeah,
incredible.
I was sitting on the floor forever.
That guy, credit to that guy. That is some awesome hustle. I forget his name too. I think it was Duke Miles. So shout out Duke Miles. I hope you're
Duke
doing
Miles.
better. But yeah, Jalen Moore gave him a solid 18 points. He had a little stretch on his own where he was just scoring willingly. And Sam Godwin, he had 17 points yesterday. And I believe he came back as like a walk-on who's using like his NIL money to pay for his like walk-on. So credit to him. He had 17 points. He saving their tournament hopes right then and there. And like I said, Jeremiah Fears, he's a pro, so not shocked he went off. But yeah, I think Oklahoma beating Mississippi State is huge for their resume. They have Kentucky coming up, which they're going to need to win that one too to just firmly establish they're on the right side of the bubble. But I think this game puts them firmly back on the right side of the bubble for now.
Blake, the floor is now yours. Which bubble team made the biggest impact on their resume this weekend?
I'm going to go with Swaggy Cows. Arkansas Razorbacks' win over Mizzou. Oh, yeah, you got to hit them with a woo. Yeah, that was a huge win at Bud Walton. Big Z, he's been showing up lately in a big-time spot with Boogie Flan, their best player on their team, being out past couple weeks. And Big Z's been that guy to step up offensively. He went 6-8 from the field here, 20 points. And then last time Arkansas faced off against Mizzou early in conference play, they lost by like 20, I think it was, on the road at Mizzou.
Yeah,
so
to
get this win, a bounce back win, is big time. And this was Arkansas's third top 25 win of the season. So if I'm John Calipari, I'm happy about where you're sitting right now after how bad they started off conference play. And I really don't think NCAA tourney talk is like out of the picture right now. I think they do get in. It's going to probably be the first four. And like you said, that's going to be TV gold for the viewership and things like that. And then to talk about the players a little more, Carter Knox, he's been looking phenomenal lately. Had 14 points on 5 of 7 from the field. John Nell Davis, finally looking like the player he was at FAU. Went 5 of 11 from the field, had 18 points on the night, 4 steals. DJ Wagner is another guy that's been looking a lot more improved lately. He had 17 on the night and 3 assists and 2 steals on the night. Then they're getting big-time spot minutes by Adu, Brazil, and Richmond. So it's good to see the Razorbacks get this win for their NCAA tourney hopes. And this is a Mizzou team that's been like one of the hottest teams in the nation.
Yeah, Missouri, I mean, they just smacked Alabama in the game before this one. So that's a huge statement for Arkansas. But, Sully, I'll get your thoughts on this real quick. Arkansas, if it started today, I'd say that they're in. They've got the win against Michigan, Kentucky, and now Missouri. But going down the stretch, I mean, there's some spots here where they cannot afford to slip up. They're going to host Texas here on Wednesday night. Then they're going to be going on the road to South Carolina. Then they're going to be going on the road to Vanderbilt. And in the final game of the regular season, they host Mississippi State. So there's still a chance that they could end up falling out, or they could further move themselves in and maybe even out of that first four line. But going down the stretch for Cal here, what's he got to do to make sure that he's safely in, you'd say?
2-1. I think 2-1. I think you're safely in, and hopefully the loss to Vanderbilt, because if it's to South Carolina, you might be actually screwed. But yeah, I think South Carolina has to be a must-win. I think Texas right now has to be a must-win because Texas just lost to South Carolina too, who screwed their bubble chances as well. I know that's not what we're talking about. Yeah, I think they have to go 2-1 to just stay in that last four in type of group, and then hopefully work the SEC tournament, have a favorable first round matchup or Wednesday game, and then hopefully also a favorable Thursday game. And then if you win 2 games in the SEC tournament, you're in. But yeah, I think 2-1 in this upcoming 3-game stretch, and they're good and they're in the tournament.
Yeah, I think winning this Missouri game really helped them, where they don't necessarily have to win against Mississippi State when they come to town, but they do, like you said, they have to win against South Carolina. They cannot drop that game, or that's going to be really damaging. Texas, I would say that's also a must-win. Vanderbilt, I mean, Vandy, they've been getting teams all season long on their home court, so I don't think anybody will hold it against you if you go there and lose. But I think it'll take, only having one loss down the stretch and then a comfortable sort of, run in Nashville, but we'll see how that unfolds. For me, I was going to say Arkansas as well, Blake, but since you took that one, I'll move to another team. Vanderbilt, they got their third-ranked win at home against Ole Miss, and that was a big one for them. I think they were teetering on that last four in, first four in kind of territory, so that's an impressive one for them. I think that if they can take care of some business down the stretch against some teams that they have there, they'll be in the field safely. They've got Arkansas and Georgia. I think they need to get those ones to be safely in, and then Texas A&M and Missouri, you're kind of playing with house money there. But I think the resume they have right now, as long as they don't take a damaging loss down the stretch, they should be in the field. But when it comes to teams that did no good favors for their resume, I think SMU kind of put the nail in the coffin for them because they have no quad one wins, and they lost at home against Clemson by 10, which was really kind of their last opportunity to really do something. If they win their conference tournament, which isn't going to happen, I'll say that right now. But that team, that to me seems like the team that did the most damage. Do you all agree with that, or is there another one that I'm not thinking of?
Definitely, because, they're sitting at 4th in the ACC and not winning a quad one game this season. And a really weak ACC team is pretty pathetic, to say the least. And like you said, this really is a nail in the coffin, I'd say, for their season.
Sully, you think there's any other ones besides SMU that kind of dug their grave this weekend?
Dug their grave? No. So it's over. But I think Texas really shot themselves in the foot, and now they're gonna probably have to go into Arkansas and win to maintain like a firm establishment within the bubble. Because I think if you lose Arkansas, I don't know what their schedule is coming up. I don't know the next 2 games. So I'm guessing they got to play a solid team, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I'll pull it up here for you. They've got Arkansas on Wednesday. Then they play Georgia next Saturday at home. They're going to travel to Mississippi State, and then their last game of the year is against Oklahoma at home.
They're going to travel to Miss. Oh man, they might have really shot themselves in the foot. Now that I think about it, yeah, I'm still going to remain with SMU, but you got to keep a watch on Texas moving forward. Is what I'll say.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's time for the trap takeaways of the weekend, gentlemen. Our favorite weekend conclusion segment. Sully, you haven't been able to give one since we introduced this new one, so I'll let you start off. Out of all the action that happened across the college basketball world, what was your biggest takeaway from this weekend?
So yeah, my first ever trap takeaway segment. It is Mark Few and Scott Drew, are they cooked? And cooked as in, are they nearing their end? So Mark Few, we just saw that Gonzaga team, they just lost to St. Mary's. They got swept by St. Mary's, which is insane saying. I think there's a possibility that after this season, because this Gonzaga team, not really good, there's a chance they see themselves in the bubble. I think they get in as an 8-9 team. That, hey, I'm not really liking this game anymore. I'm not liking coaching in this college basketball atmosphere. I think there's a chance Mark Few calls calls it quits. And in Scott Drew's case, rather than calling it quits and quitting college basketball for good, or retiring, I should say, I think there's a chance, hey, maybe Indiana's a better pasture for me. Maybe I turned down Kentucky and I turned down Louisville, and Baylor, I just lost to Colorado here, which is, by the way, an awful loss. And they might be seeing themselves in the bubble here pretty soon. Maybe it's run its course here in Baylor. I won a national championship. I did something that's very hard doing considering what their program history is. And I'm guessing you two know what happened in their program many years ago. So don't need to get into that. But I think there's a chance Scott Drew was like, man, it's ran its course here. Similar to like Calipari in Kentucky. It's ran its course. I need to find a better home. And I think Indiana, I really think there's an actual chance that, hey, I think Bloomington is the right spot for me going forward in my college basketball career, and this is where I want to end. So, yeah, my biggest trap takeaway is are Scott Drew and Mark Few nearing their end at their current locations.
Let me throw out a wild card for you before we move on from yours. What about Bill Self?
Oh, man, Bill, I think there's a chance he calls it quits and retires too, because I think this team is putting him through ultimate hell currently, even though they just ran poor Oklahoma State out of the gym.
Yeah, that BYU performance, he just sounded absolutely furious in the post game. That sounds like a guy that's getting worn out, but maybe all it's going to take is getting rid of Hunter Dickinson and he'll be revitalized. We'll see. That I wouldn't really want to be centering my team around him. It's time for him to hang him up. But my takeaway, the trap takeaway of the weekend for me is college officials. They continue to be a storyline this season for all the wrong reasons. I know you all saw the phantom foul there for Arizona against BYU. I'm assuming both of you all agreed that was a horrible call, right?
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah, one of the worst calls I've ever seen.
Completely straight up. I mean, we had Mark Pope getting walked down by a referee on the sideline. That was just an absolutely embarrassing look, trying to power trip head coaches. It's been a ref show all season long. Too many fouls being called. Just let the players play, man. I mean, looking at that Arizona-BYU game, I tweeted this out earlier today. You've got BYU, a team that's fighting for their tournament life. They're on the bubble right now. Arizona, they're looking to play themselves into a better seed. That's a game where you just got to let things go and you got to let it run its course naturally and not enforce your will at the end of the game there like they did by making that call on Tommy Townsend, because that was just absolutely brutal. That did not warrant a foul call at all, in my opinion, and I think they really stole that one from Arizona. But, I mean, you got to give credit to BYU for being in position to even win that game to begin with. But, yeah, college officials, they're on the hot seat. They're making their names known for all the wrong reasons. I've always said that if you go into a game and you look at the officiating crew and you know the names that are on there, that's not a good sign. And that's what we've been having a lot of across the nation this season. But Blake, last but not least, what is your trap takeaway of the weekend?
I touched on it a little bit earlier when we went through some of the games, but I think it's got to be Duke and how high their ceiling really is. I do think this team will win. I don't know about will win. They can win the national championship. If it's not Auburn, like I said earlier, then I think it's Duke. Boat race in Illinois. Granted, Illinois sucked lately, and they've been plagued by a sickness. But this Duke team has put belt to ass all year, even in a weak ACC conference. They're beating these teams by 20+. They beat a really good Louisville team by I think it was 20-some. They beat Auburn, which not many teams have done. And, yeah, this team is just super deep, top to bottom. They got one of, if not the best player in college basketball, with that being Cooper Flagg. The kid can do everything. He's generational. I don't think you can negate that at all. And then he just got a bunch of nice pieces around him, with that being Kaman Maluach, Con Kneppel. Sion James has been a really good piece this year, Tulane transfer. Tyrese Proctor, he's panned out really well for them this season. Mason Gillis has been a quality piece, like a glue guy all season long. Isaiah Evans is either really hot or really cold, but I mean, lately he's been a really good piece in the offense. Caleb Foster, He struggled a lot this season, but he came to life in this game, had double digits. And I think any team that's having 7 guys score 10-plus points in a game, I think you're bound to win a national championship, to be honest with you guys.
I got another trap takeaway for the weekend to close this out. This time next Sunday, this is going to give everybody chills. I hope you all are ready for this. Conference tournament games will be beginning next Sunday. The ASUN Championship first round, ESPN Plus. Mark your calendars. March is almost here. We are so close, gentlemen. I am ready for these conference tournaments to get underway. I'm ready for the big dance here in a couple more weeks. Selection Sunday, obviously. We've got a lot of content planned in the days coming. Going to have a lot of material as we head into March. But for now, this has been another successful episode. Good to see you again, Jack Sullivan. But for now, the Full Court Trap Podcast signing out. Luke, Blake, and Jack Sullivan. We'll see you later.